Hello and welcome to the last session before we have our Solutions Hub reception. This session is about next-gen media transport, advances in compression, streaming, and interoperability. The first presenter is John Dale from MediaLinks, and John Dale is the Chief Marketing Officer at MediaLinks and has significant experience in the media industry, focusing on robust contribution media and data connectivity applications and managing the MediaLinks solution offerings. And he will give us some more infos about TR-07 and TR-08 and its updates. John, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk about TR-07 and TR-08, which are current standards, or I should say technical recommendations that the VSF has published. And we're in a process of updating those documents based on industry feedback. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. So pretty straightforward discussion here. We'll talk about TR-07, TR-08. We'll talk about the activity group in the VSF that's working on this, goals for the revision effort, and a schedule for completion. So the original documents, technical recommendations, were published in August 2021. The documents were revised in April 20th, 2022. The two documents include JPEG XS coding, but in two different methods of encapsulation. TR-07, if you're not familiar with that, is using MPEG-2TS over IP, SMPTE ST2022-2, and TR-08 is using SD211022. They both use very low latency coding, which is one of the first very low latency codecs used in an MPEG-2TS encapsulation. We'll talk about some issues with that. They're widely deployed for both 2K and 4K applications, and we've had multiple industry interop tests and collected some feedback from those, and this activity that's going on right now is going to deal directly with that feedback. So the main effort in the revision activity is to deal with industry feedback. But also there's a few things that are going to be added to the recommendations. We're adding temporal differential coding, which is a new capability in JPEG XS. That's called TDC. And we're making some changes to improve interoperability. There's 34 members that have joined the activity group. That was pretty impressive in terms of a number of interested parties in updating or revising these recommendations. We've had 18 meetings to date, meetings every week, Thursdays at 10 a.m., and you have to be a VSF member to join the activity group. So goals for the activity group, as I mentioned, JPEG XS temporal differential coding, which is a new capability, is going to be added. In TR-08, it's based on RFC 9134. So we are working with the IETF on that revision. That revision was in vote for adoption over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I believe. There's a new capability set for TDC. There's new interoperability points for TDC. In addition, and this was a change for all of the JPEG work that we've done so far in the VSF, where there's specific now frame rates for sort of non-typical broadcast, and you see them listed on the screen. We've also added a 1 gig max interoperability table in TR-08 that's really focused at IPMX applications where bandwidth is limited, and that will have a higher compression than what's used on the other capability sets. We've updated the normative reference section to include current documents. A number of the documents have been revised since the original publication. Item G on this list, talk a little bit more about that, is traffic shaping and delivery timing. This is a real key area of concern for interoperability testing and something that wasn't described, especially in TR-07 when we did the original document. And then overall, provide more clarifications and better understandings for implementers. And the implementers of these two compression delivery standards are different than what we've seen in the past. It's a very broad set of implementers. We can't make assumptions that people or implementers will just do the right thing or understand what's been done in the past. You have to be more specific because you allow a little bit of flexibility, and we find different implementers take different paths, and then you wind up without interoperability. So the first thing is TDC, which is temporal differential coding. This takes advantage of some buffering and looking at the wavelets and predicting what the wavelets will be in future portions of the picture. TDC can optimize at a given rate or allow reduced bit rates for some content. It works very well with graphics, with static imagery and graphics, not so well with natural moving content. But it does have a use case, and especially since TR-08 is focused for IPMX applications, TDC has a role there, and that's why we're adding it to TR-08 and TR-07. This is just a drawing of some of the key aspects of JPEG XS TDC. Some of the benefits. It does maintain low latency, but also provides high quality compression and a little bit more compression than what we see with standard JPEG XS. So it's efficient. It's also can be used in both hardware and software implementations. So it's practical with folks that have implemented already JPEG XS, that they can add TDC. A big part of this is also that any implementation with TDC also includes the high profile, so that it includes the legacy profile as well as TDC. So there's backwards compatibility. So you can have this additional capability, but also backwards capability. It doesn't break any of the existing implementations. So activity on TR-08 with RFC 9134. So this RFC just needed some slight wording changing and the addition of TDC to it. So that has been done. The draft has been submitted, and it was, I think it's in the adoption period in the IETF. We expect that will take a little bit of time to complete. We're hoping that it's completed as a new RFC when we complete the TR. If it's not, we'll reference the draft document. Also had some of the VSF team members are on the IETF ABT core group that work on this, so that we made sure that we supported that effort. New capability sets and interop points. So in both TRs, the TR covers a broad range of formats and frame rates. What we have in the document is a table that shows the various capability sets and interop points. We've added to each one of those a TDC set, so that you can build an implementation that doesn't support TDC, or you can build an implementation that supports TDC. They'll both be compliant to the recommendation. So Section 8 TR-07 provides capability sets. capability set A has a matching TDC set, capability B has a matching TDC set, and capability set C has a matching TDC set. So we didn't really change anything except add the TDC, except for the new frame rates that are added. Otherwise, the capability sets are the same. Talk about the new frame rates that we're adding. So we have some of the cinema frame rates, as well as some popular streaming rates, 30 and 60p. So these get added to TR-07 capability sets A and B, as well as AT and BT. And for TR-08, these are added to capability sets A and B as well, AT and BT being the TDC versions of those. So on TR-08, we added a capability set of 2 bits per pixel, which is a higher compression rate. This was to get all of the various formats to fit within a 1 gig transmission pipe. And with that, we allow higher compression. This capability set table E is just in TR-08. So that's been added for 1 gig maximum bit rate applications, and it includes 1080p and 2160p UHD1 formats within that table. This new table includes the new frame rates that I just mentioned above as well. So next section, I just want to cover some of the documents that we reference in TR-07 and TR-08 have changed since we did the original publication. And in terms of the JPEG XS documents, they reference JPEG XS TDC now. So we've changed the references to those documents. We've also included a little bit more detail on some of the aspects of elementary stream to MPEG-2 TS mapping, which weren't so clear in the previous documents. This is a new section for TR-07. This is the traffic shaping and delivery timing model. What we wanted to do with this is to describe a model that shows how a typical decoder would operate, so that a compliant encoder would send its packets, would encapsulate the elementary stream into TS packets into IP, so that the model decoder could decode those. And we found, especially with the latest round of interop testing, that there was quite a bit of variation on how implementers were doing this. And not all receivers could receive all transmitted streams, mainly because of some of the timing variation. So we're putting this model, this model into the TR so that implementers can build their transmitters so that the decoder can receive them. We will still have some flexibility, and this goes back to looking at how 2110 dealt with the receiver model for a gapped or a linear transmission. A gap transmission being transmitted during the active picture area, and having that pixel content very close together, as opposed to a linear model, which is spread out over the whole frame. You have a little bit more time between transmissions. So both will be accommodated. We're still in process of writing this specific section, but we hope that with this in the document, we'll get better, the implementations will be more interoperable and improved interoperability. So I think that was one of the main issues we found in interop testing. We had a number of other things, and we go back and look at the documents, and there's some ambiguity. And we've tried now to address the ambiguity, making sure that if we state that there's two ways of doing something, we're trying to make sure that they're both covered very clearly, and that implementers actually do them in that way, so that a compliant receiver knows where to look for information. We had some settings in TR-07 and TR-08 that weren't the same in the JPEG XS stream, so we've changed that. We've also clarified, I mentioned before, how to go from elementary stream to MPEG-2 TS. There's different ways of doing that. With a very low latency application, we have to be more careful about that. So we're adding more information about that. And then a number of things that didn't seem to be an issue with JPEG 2000 in terms of what's the repetition rate, when do you send PMT, PAT information in the MPEG-2 TS. But we had a lot of feedback for those. Receiver has to wait too long before it gets the information. How often do you send it? You don't want to send it too often. So we're going to put some recommendations in the document about that. Ancillary data, because JPEG XS is such a fast codec, sending ancillary data is really important, that you send that on time, that it gets to the decoder when it needs it. So we had to add some information on that. Some clarifications on PES header length, that's just helpful for implementers. And then audio channel PID configuration. This one, we think that we wouldn't really have to specify, but we got feedback that not all implementers support the specific numbers of channels per PID. So you could have an implementation where audio is not interoperable because that number of audio channels per PID isn't supported by the receiver. Transmitter supports another one. So we're going to put in some recommendation there to make sure there's a baseline that everyone has to support, so you have guaranteed audio interoperability. So we talk about where we are with the work. As I mentioned before, the group meets once a week. We've been working on and just about finished with the timing model piece on TR-07. We have to go back and now review the documents and clean up all of the improvements and the other clarifications. So the idea is to get them, to get new documents published with a date, hopefully by the end of this year. We will deprecate the old documents. They'll still be listed on the VSF website. This will be very similar to what we did in the past. We'll support the revision of RFC 3194. Hopefully we'll get the new RFC number before this effort is completed. And we'll try to get these published by the end of the year, by late December. So there is a potential for file exchange or actual interop testing in 26 to support the not only TEC but the other changes that we made in the documents. And we're hoping that the result of all this will allow us to have better interoperability and more successful interoperability. So thanks for your time this late in the day, and welcome any questions.
Please use the app to put some questions to John. And maybe I have a question. You talked about interoperability. Do you plan some interop workshops with different vendors? Is it maybe also a must to join these interop workshops, or is it for free?
Yes. So what we've done in the past, and we haven't done one in a while, is we did interoperability workshops at the VSF VidTrans conference here on the West Coast, and that's usually the end of February, beginning of March. And probably the biggest thing that we can do ahead of that is to do a file exchange, just to take transmitted file streams and compare them. But then if that's successful and we see we're going in the right direction, we could actually have an interop. We don't have a lot of time between now and February. It seems like it's a lot of time, but it's a little bit challenging to put together an interop in that time. But that is definitely a possibility. First, we have to finish the document stuff, so.
You're getting lazy. No questions. When do you think the first implementations, including TDC, could be available?
Well, my guess would be that sometime early next year. Again, we stay on schedule. We get the documents finished by the end of the year, December sometime. Then we would hope. It's a little crunch, but 2 or 3 months after that, usually that's enough time to get these done. So
there is a question. Any of these changes will improve compression ratios?
Compression ratios?
Mm-hmm.
So the 2 bits per pixel is the maximum for the 1 gig on TDC. The rest of the standards are still following up to 4 bits per pixel. So you can go lower, right? I think we state 1.5 bits per pixel in the TR-07 and TR-08, and 1 bit per pixel is the lowest rate in TR-08 for the TDC. Of course, implementers can go lower, but that's what we have in the tables right now.
Okay, then we give you about 8 minutes back, and we go to our next presentation. Thanks, John.
Yep, welcome.